call this meeting to order at 3:45 on September 14th. We'll start with introductions. I'm Jennifer Truman, Vice Chair, chairing today, and we'll start on this end.
I'm Leo Suarez.
Bryce Connors.
Karen Ringe.
Linda Davis.
Terrence Roof.
Thanks, y'all. Does anyone, staff, or anyone on the board have revisions or additions to the agenda?
We have no additions or revisions ourselves. We did have one request from the board itself for an addition, and that was a brief discussion on safety and security. And so we will be happy to provide a verbal update on that. We don't have anything concrete like a presentation, but I can certainly provide a verbal update of where we are.
Thanks for that. Anyone
And we
else?
can place that anywhere on the agenda that the board desires.
This is Karen Ringe. I was interested in that. That's and I wasn't sure if item D under finance and policy was part of that, and I'm just wondering if perhaps that could come sooner on the agenda, because I'm not sure, since we're starting late, if I can stay till
Sure.
5:30.
Since it's just a verbal, maybe we'll add that first ahead of the staff information before we go into any public comments we might have. Does that work?
That'd be fine certainly with me.
Any other additions? No? Well, let's move into I think what prompted the board asking about the safety issues was that there was some talk in the newspaper about private security downtown, both at the bus station and other places. And we hadn't been presented about that yet as a board. I know things are moving quickly on the city side, so just some updates would be great.
All right, so if it's okay with the board, we'll extract item B, sub item D under the committee reports, and we can just report that out now. So as what has been reported, there is a collective effort to look at safety, certainly at Go Raleigh Station, which is our immediate concern in the transit realm, but certainly throughout the downtown area as well. So when you think about that, there's lots of stakeholders at that. There's transportation, there's parks and recreation, there's other stakeholders around. So we're trying to make this a coordinated effort. So it doesn't mean that everyone will do exactly the same thing, because we all have all of our missions are a little bit different. But we all have the same goal, which is to make sure that if we have activities, that they're safe and comfortable and inviting to the community at large. And so that's what we're working on. At this time, are we looking at forces that would supplement existing forces or activities that provide safety and security downtown? And so yes, we are. Are we far enough along for me to identify exactly who that is and what that will look like? Unfortunately not. We're working on that very, as feverishly as we can to get that in place. But what I can offer the board is, once we have those details, like what is it that we're doing, who is it that we're potentially contracting with, what types of hours of operation, what types of general what is their mission within Go Raleigh Station. I think that is something that we can share as soon as that information is available. That should be before the next meeting, but I just don't have all of that wrapped up at the moment in a package that I can present. So yeah, I think that's unfortunately about as much as I have at the moment, but I'll be glad to ask any specific questions that you may have in regards to how we would approach that at Go Raleigh Station. Again, our goal at Go Raleigh Station is, again, to provide an inviting and comfortable environment. Number one, well, actually, I would put two things under number one, which is certainly for our customers, but also for our RATP Dev employees that occupy that facility for many hours of the day. So, that's the overall goal. Nothing else, just to make sure that everything feels comfortable and inviting. But again, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and my apologies that I don't have additional information at this time, but we certainly can send that out just as soon as we have it.
Madam Chair. Karen Ringe. I read the article in the News and Observer and was just a little surprised because, and concerned because, as the article presented, there have been concerns about public safety to people in downtown, but specifically around Go Raleigh Station. So my first concern, obviously, as you said, David, our staff, our bus operators, and certainly our clients, our riders, are they being affected in a negative way? And is that what in part prompted the call for, as the newspaper reported, the city's intending to use a private security company, I guess outside of, Raleigh Police. So can you at least tell us if you've had any reports of any confrontations among our riders or our staff?
I'd have to let our ATB dev answer that for anything specifically that may have been an incident in Go Raleigh Station itself. There have been some incidents outside of Go Raleigh Station that ended up in the station. So in close proximity, I'm aware of those, but I'm not aware of anything directly internally impacting us in a negative way recently. That being said, though, I think that the overall goal, again, this is not just transit trying to do something. This is, multiple departments and agencies working together collectively in order to make sure that we have a safe environment in the downtown area. Go Raleigh Station certainly is a key component of that. We have probably, you could consider the only, certainly over at Moore Square Park, we do have restrooms now available that have been there since that park was renovated. But before that, and still now, we have the most available restrooms in all of downtown with the longest service hours and availability. And so with those public facilities that are available during those extended hours and 7 days a week, obviously those on a good day anywhere, whether that's any public facility or certainly with general use, those types of facilities can just be tough to maintain, and to make sure that whoever visits those is safe and comfortable is our concern. I'm not saying that the restrooms are the issue whatsoever. I'm just using that kind of as an example of this is a public place which has a lot of public activity. It's like a small airport. We have 7,000 boardings a day there when we have our ridership is peaking out. So it's not a small that's not a small number when you think about that many boardings on a daily basis. So again, don't know of anything specific, but certainly we want to make sure that that does not occur.
Mr. Law, did you have anything you wanted to add to address Ms. Rich's question?
No, I think Mr. Eden pretty much answered pretty much what I can say is that we haven't.
Thank you.
I apologize sitting down, but no, I can't add too much more to it than Mr. Eden has advised you. Basically, it's just a lot of people that with mental challenges that we have down there that creates incidents. But other than those two incidents that not happen at Go Raleigh Station, but out in the park and end up into the station, pretty much those two things that I can say right offhand that has really impacted us in terms of our employees. But other than that, as I say, just dealing with the day-to-day challenges of people.
And y'all are being included in these larger conversations about what type of security will be coming to downtown as well?
Most definitely, and I don't know if there's a single right size there, but yeah, most definitely. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak for Bill. I thought you were talking about
Yeah, you're
transit
good.
in general.
Transit in general
But
and
I would say that,
RTP
yeah,
specifically.
wherever I go or wherever Bill goes, we're together. So
Yeah, absolutely.
We got to get you matching suits.
Anything else?
That's it for now. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Did anyone else have questions? I think my only, it's probably more of a comment and a request, just to keep us informed via email as these things come up. Whenever something gets in the newspaper, I know I get questions about what's going on, like I should know. So it's just good to kind of know as much information as possible as members of the board, because public folks do reach out to us. And I know there's some conversation around understanding how different levels of security, private and police will interact, how they'll be accountable to the public and things like that that have come up since this came out. So just if we could be as informed as possible as soon as possible, we'd appreciate it.
Most definitely, and as soon as we have those details, we'll get those out to the board, and I do expect that before the next meeting. Yes, certainly, that is the hope, before the next meeting.
Okay, I'm looking at the agenda and the clock. It's almost 4 o'clock. Do we have public comments? No public comment today? Okay. Then I guess we'll move down to staff information. Take it over, Mason. See, pretty pictures.
Yeah, right, as you predicted. So I'm going to talk briefly about Car Free Day. I decided to cut that 30-minute presentation down to maybe a minute. So we do Car Free Day and recognize this as much as we can because it's important. Before I get to the main presentation, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Wake Up Wake County for taking the lead in the community this year in promoting and highlighting this awareness. It is a very important thing that everyone in Raleigh should be aware of, and so I just want to make sure I give them the proper thanks for the efforts they put in. So briefly running through this, every year on September 22nd, cities across the world celebrate World Car Free Day, encouraging drivers, motorists to give up their car for that day. There's a couple reasons why this is done, and I'll just kind of briefly touch on them. One is the equity piece. As we all are well aware, there's a lot of folks in our community who don't have access to cars for whatever that reason may be, income, abilities, age. So there's a lot of folks who can't make the choice to drive and they have to find some other way to get around. So this day brings that to the forefront and making sure we're recognizing those folks who can't use a car and the backbone of their day is go Raleigh or cycling or some other means that could be difficult to them depending on where they live and their situation. And so promoting that walking and cycling and public transit are done in a safe manner, in an equitable manner, making sure we're providing that to as many folks as possible. And then the other reason, of course, and obviously, is emissions and sustainability. Transportation broadly in the U.S. is one of the largest drivers of CO2 emissions, and a large part of that comes from the private vehicles. So a lot of people driving every day, getting to work, getting to the doctor's office, et cetera, are creating a lot of CO2 emissions, and those, as everyone knows, are creating catastrophes in a lot of our communities, even here in Raleigh. It's been a very hot summer. I'm from Texas, and even this heat to me has been pretty draining. So we need to do things to reduce those continued effects and escalations, and encouraging people to get out of their cars, explore other ways to get their transportation needs met is an incredibly important part of that, because it's that single choice by the individual that is going to have the most major impact. We have to encourage people to take the bus or to cycle or to walk when and where they can, and not always default to the car as the choice for getting around. And so this is what this day does. September 22nd, we'll be putting out a lot of information, talking with folks. Part of this is the campaign, making sure y'all are aware. So in the community, you can let folks know about this as well. But yeah, it's just very important, and we want to make sure this is widely known in the community as possible. And we want everyone to imagine what it would be like if we didn't have cars, and how much that can impact our community and increase the actual positive benefit and outcomes. I mean, imagine if Fayetteville Street or Glenwood didn't have cars on it, the kind of vibrancy that would be brought into those communities. And imagine if we had kind of a dedication, a priority to focus on those folks who don't have cars, the access and economic opportunities they would then be open to. But yeah, that is all I have. I will not take up any more of your time.
I expected you to end with the picture of the bus with the scooter and the e-bike, bike share.
I wanted to keep it fresh. We use that picture a lot.
Okay.
We need to really only bring that out maybe every so often.
We need a new photo.
We do need new photos. Okay. Andrew, where's our photos? Yeah, I will also take questions if anyone just has general questions about it.
Any questions?
I do have a question. Do you track ridership to bikes or alternative to cars post these sort of one-day events?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in two parts. So one, we do things throughout the year to engage the community. So one of our biggest months or campaigns of action is Bike Month. That's where we go out into the communities and do different activities, whether that's bike repair, educational campaigns, just fun block party style events. We're really pushing that. Right now, this week, we're doing Tri-Transit Week, so that's really focused on getting folks out onto buses, breaking down those barriers. And then throughout the year, we have other campaigns, but how we track that is through a mix of areas. Prior to suspended fares, we would track, ridership data, and Go Pass data is a way to see like large employers investing in that. Of course, ridership data is still used to see if we're having growth in that system. When it comes to cycling and walking, those are harder to track because those are more spontaneous and produce less information that we're able to record. But we do surveys biannually within the city. And we also have some online software that people can use and track their daily commutes. It's just kind of a voluntary way of gathering that information.
And I would say from a bike share standpoint, we do have the data on those bike share utilization. As far as the scooters, those are permitted, but I'm not sure if we have access. Those are private, so I'm not sure if we have direct access to their data.
We do. That is handled through our bike and pedestrian program, but we do get, I think maybe on a monthly or quarterly basis, we get ridership data on that.
Can I add to that? Oh, I'm sorry, Linda.
No, you go ahead.
Terrence, I just wanted to mention with the communication staff is keeping data on hits on our website following our advertising campaigns. I mean, and this is, publicizing Car Free Day is sort of part of broader communications that they're doing, and we're in the middle of an advertising campaign that we've talked about. We're going to talk about more in the future called Busopolate when we get more data. But the point is, since we've been doing more advertising, we're getting more hits on our website, which we believe translates into greater transit use because people are coming to us for more information. That helps.
And I just had a quick question. I guess it's too late now, but I was wondering, in part of the way that you communicate about Car Free Day, do you send communications out to the corporate, corporations that we know are located in the Raleigh area? I keep wanting to figure out how we can convince them to encourage their employees to carpool or ride the bus. And I didn't know, how much interaction that might be.
Yeah, so we have newsletters and ongoing personal kind of professional relationships with a lot of the employers, particularly in our downtown core. Red Hat is a great partner. We work with them monthly basis to provide, information, resources, and services to them. Another good partner is McAdams. We're actually working with them to develop we're called them Taste of Transportation tours. So we'll take some of their staff out. We'll do a bike share, scooter ride, get on the bus, and we'll do things like that to educate their employees and their corporate staff. So we do work and maintain these relationships to encourage these businesses to pursue these options. Of course, that ultimately comes down to the individual business's preferences, but we do our best to identify those corporations who are going to be most likely to work with us as our high-value targets. So McAdams, for example, we're going to be working very heavily with them in the next few months, really adding some more services for their employees.
Okay, thanks.
And it's what our Commute Smart staff does all the time. They're constantly working with corporations.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mason. That brings us to committee reports. We're moving quickly through the agenda today. Route Committee met, and LaTanya is not here today, so she asked me to give our report. So I've got notes on these different pieces. We got a brief update on the access software issues that had come up both at some of our meetings and some of the city council meetings with the Go Access service. I don't know if staff wants to give a brief update on that, or if you'd like me to say where we are.
Okay, on the Access software, I'll be happy to provide a brief update there. So beginning August 1st, we did switch software. With that process kicked off, our old software had been sold twice within 18 months and had pretty much dropped all research and development, and the actual support for the software was beginning to dwindle. The existing owner of that software was really just pushing existing clients over to its software platform. And we really weren't comfortable with that. It wasn't a bad software, but certainly we knew that there were other options out there, especially with the type of system we have. Again, I don't want to get too windy here, but we do have 48 individual taxi companies that we work with, representing about 200 taxis on the street. As well as we have our RATP Dev, which has a fleet of vehicles that provides a mixture of trips, and certainly all of our vehicles can carry non-ambulatory passengers as well, which is a big part of our ridership. So we implemented that software, and as we went into that process, our business rules didn't change, and the business rules for the clients really didn't change. The problem is that the software interpreted those business rules a little bit differently. And so, and also there was a learning curve for, you have to think that when you have 200, we operate a little less than 100 fixed route buses on a daily basis, but our paratransit system, that represents 225 vehicles on the street. So that's like 225 people that we have to train to make sure that they understand how the software works. So that's really the how we started off, not exactly what, how we wanted it to start that first week. The second week we had a better handle on it, and by the third week I feel that, we were doing much, much better, had pretty much settled in. But since that time, we've been identifying, clients that have data that didn't come over to the new system correctly. Their phone number happened to be in a particular comment section of the old software, but the new software didn't pick that up, and so they aren't getting their notifications and things of that nature. Fast forward to today, we're doing much better. I would say that we still have some individuals that do have concerns because it is not exactly like the old system. It is something much more powerful. We now can see those 200 taxis where before we could not see those 200 taxis. And now when someone performs a trip, it's very much like a transportation network company. We can see that trip. We know where that taxi is. We're making sure, and we hard-coded within the system some of the key things that our customers want, especially our visually impaired community, was that they always get their taxi of choice or taxi company of choice because they have relationships with those providers and they know exactly where they want to go as far as a particular door. So you don't think about that. I want to go to the Walmart in Garner. That's easy. Go to the Walmart in Garner. Walmart in Garner has like 4 main entrances. So if you're if you're visually impaired, you're familiar with one entrance because that's what you always use. So those trip patterns and those understandings of those needs, have been out there for decades. And so we're just trying to make sure that we're replicating that availability of those particular taxi companies to perform those trips to the best of our ability. And really right now, the only reason that is not occurring is if the taxi company's telling us that they can't perform the trip. So that's going a little bit into the weeds, but I just wanted to let you understand some of the intricacies of implementing, the software within our environment. Paratransit world is probably one of the most challenging aspects of transit anywhere in the United States. It doesn't get the recognition that it deserves, in my opinion. It is, I said at the at a meeting the other night, a public meeting about this when we had a community conversation about our change. I said our fixed route system, if on a good year, we'll change our schedules twice a year. We'll update our routes. We'll hopefully add service. We'll do things like that. So we build 2 schedules a year, and we deploy that out to drivers, and we perform that service. And that's with just shy of 100 vehicles. And a paratransit system, we do that every night at 5:30 for 200 vehicles. So they don't really get the credit that they deserve. They're building a schedule for over 200 vehicles every night at 5:30. So again, a lot more there than meets the eye many times. So, but getting better every day, and I think that hopefully in the very near future, we'll be very happy with this change, and we'll be providing you all with some shock and awe data of like, I don't understand how we didn't have this all along.
Thanks for the update. It does sound like from the initial first rocky days, things have gotten consistently better. Also want to thank you and Mr. Walker and the other folks on the paratransit team for taking the time to go back out to the community and have those conversations, the community conversation that you just talked about, specifically with the paratransit community and several of the organizations that represent the disabled community that have expressed concern. I know as part of that, Mr. Walker mentioned at committee that there are a couple of other implementations of features in the software in the future that we've talked about at the board level and at committee level before, like having an app, for example. Can you speak a little bit to like how that implementation will hopefully go differently?
Yes. So when you think about software implementation, you would always like to slowly deploy that, but sometimes that between an old system and a new system so you really have to make that decision about, and I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but there's 2 ways to do that. You can deploy it slowly and run 2 systems, which has at risk, or you can jump all in, which also has its risk, as we know. So that's looking at the old way. The good thing is that as we deploy additional features on this software, we can mitigate those risks, and we can do that in a very controlled way because our base software will already be in place. And those types of options that will be available in the future, as Ms. Truman stated, would be an app that would be available on a phone or on a computer. And in that, you could schedule trips. You can check your trips in the future. Once your vehicle says, I'm on the way to pick you up, you can see where your vehicle is in relation to your address, as you would with a transportation network company, as well as that software will be providing, which it's doing now, but will actually be more enhanced in the next hopefully day or 2. Will actually provide you with the name of the company and taxi company that is coming to your address to pick you up once it's underway, and it gives you a time frame. It will be there in 6 to 12 minutes or whatever that window is. And then, so that's the day of. And it also does the same thing the night before, telling you of the trips that you had scheduled the next day. So that's the IVR that we currently have. But I think the main thing that was alluded to is the app, the ability to book trips, to see your trip, to understand how far that vehicle is away from you. Now, you may ask, well, how is that going to assist the visually impaired? Unfortunately, I did not write down and bring with me the visually impaired certification for software. There is a formal certification that they go through in order to be certified, and our particular software is certified under that standard. So it should actually work for someone who is visually impaired as well, as long as they know how to navigate that software with voice commands and things of that nature. So we are excited about the opportunity. We certainly want things to settle down right now, but are looking forward to providing those extra options in the future. And that's going to be a great thing. One thing I did want to put out there that we have heard consistently is we are getting some extended wait times just because I think just because it's still new to everyone, a bit new in our call center. So we are looking at our capacity and how we can bring that capacity down. As we have more information on how we'll approach that, we'll certainly share that. But we know that is something that's a priority to our community that uses the Go Raleigh Access Program. And again, we'll be assessing that and determining the best way to mitigate any extended wait times. It seems to be. I mean, we checked it this afternoon. I think we called in and we were caller number 1. So at times it's a beautiful thing. But if you call us on a Monday morning first thing or late on a Friday, it can be challenging. So we're trying to figure out how do we best manage our resources to mitigate those peak periods.
Thank you. I'll keep rolling through committee report. Just as a summary, most of the meeting we spent actually looking at the FY25 work plan projects from the Wake Transit Plan. Those are the bus routes that will be receiving increased hours, like span of service, increased frequency, or new alignments and routings with the Wake Transit Plan funding for FY25. It's about a dozen routes that we were looking at for various, mostly small changes, some larger. So you can take a look at the route committee agenda and see which routes those are. There were several that we'll be continuing to discuss as they move into implementation. FY25, obviously, not an immediate change coming, but route committee has the privilege of looking far ahead in the future. So if you're interested in particular routes and want to check, my own bus route is one of them. So I know, and several other folks in the committee. So if you want to look at them, that'll be in the committee presentation notes.
Jen, could you just summarize, though, in terms of, you said there are about a dozen routes. Are we talking about increased frequency? Are we talking about going to new destinations? Or both?
Both. So span, increased hours, several buses extending, I think even one was past midnight around the NC State area. Frequency for multiples going to 15 minutes or 30 minutes if they had been 30 minutes or an hour. And then several that, especially the L routes, like the 27L, the 7L, the 11L, that are looking at alignment shifts as their frequency change and how they relate to connections to other bus routes. So in most places, that's to increase the frequency. It will mean that some places that are served might not be served. Some places that are not served will be served. It's pretty complicated and route specific. So I would encourage folks to look at those maps and in the public to, if you have comments about those things, to bring them to route committee. Either via email or coming to one of our meetings. And there were also capital investments for bus stop improvements, new buses, the new paratransit center, things like that are included in the FY25 work plan from the Wake Transit Plan. Other questions on that one?
Well, I'm just saying, I'm just pleased that we're continuing, and given all the challenges we've had and some having to reduce some service, that we're still moving forward with the things that the public said they wanted from the Wake Transit Plan, which was increased frequency of service, more hours, and going more places. So I know a lot of people are working on this, and I'm just glad we're continuing to move forward. So thank you.
Thank you for being the voice for increased frequency all this time. And then the last Wake Transit Plan update is that as many people have heard, because it's been all over the news, what happens with rail that was included in the Wake Transit Plan is going to be different based on federal funding and decisions made above our level at the regional level. But as a region, we'll be looking at what to do with those pieces of the Wake Transit Plan. And so they're, I think, calling that the revisioning plan. Is that correct, Mr. Eman? Yes.
Yes.
So we got a kind of notification that coming soon will be a Wake Transit revisioning plan to look at those components. A not small amount of the Wake Transit Plan was funding for commuter rail, which won't be occurring, certainly not within the timeline of of the original Wake Transit Plan. And so looking at what we can do as a community, and hopefully those of us on the RTA will have a voice in advocating for what we want to serve our users and our city. Anything else?
All I was going to say is I did want to make sure that the board knows that this review of the Wake Transit Plan is a programmed activity. So about every 5 or 6 years, into the plan, the overall plan, the financial model is reviewed, determine if there's any resets, have priorities changed, what's happening. So while we've had some pretty big decisions, in our time frame, this is not a reaction to that necessarily. This is really a truly programmed part of the ongoing updates and understanding of what we're going to do next within the transit plan. So this particular exercise will reaffirm certain elements and may change, future elements. We'll just have to see. But yeah, I just didn't want people to think this was a reaction. This was part of the actual process.
So in other words, does that might mean that, because I hear that there was money set for commuter rail, is this possibly a reallocation, a discussion of reallocating to something else?
I would think that this process would help us determine what the financial model looks like over the next 10 years. So whatever that, so in short, yes. Does it mean that, well, I won't go there yet. I would just say yes.
Sure.
It will determine the financial model. So we would have physically constrained projects over the next, reaffirming and projecting projects over the next 10 years.
Gotcha.
I'd like to make a comment. Because I have no other place to say this, I am personally very disappointed about this change in the Wake Transit Plan. And I have said this before, but when the voters voted, they were assuming that commuter rail was going to be part of this plan. And we saw light rail not happen, and that didn't have anything to do with our county or the city of Raleigh. Commuter rail was definitely not, it was not going to be run by the city of Raleigh or Go Raleigh. It was certainly part of it's affecting our community. And I have spoken with folks who've been involved in the decision-making process, and people are trying to be very positive about regional rail, the potential in the future, but it will never be commuter rail. And I think decisions, clearly, as you know, there has to be revisioning, reassessments given funding, support from the federal government, support from the General Assembly or lack thereof. But I just think it's extremely disappointing for the public. Fortunately, Go Raleigh is focusing on expanding bus service, and we're moving ahead with that, and bus rapid transit. And that is our job. But I do think we all need to be aware that the public really wanted commuter rail. And I do think it's going to affect transportation patterns and air quality in our region significantly. So I just needed to express, as someone who's been very involved with the Wake Transit Plan for a long time.
Thank you. I think we can all relate to that. Any other questions? The only other thing we discussed in Route Committee, with a little bit of ongoing notes on the public brochures and whether they reflect our routes and how to ride the bus as efficiently as possible. And we have some notes we'll be passing to the marketing committee probably within the next month.
And I don't want to belabor the point there, but on the commuter rail component, I think that those programs right now are just very difficult to fund under a federal environment. Are there other potential capacity improvements that can be made in the future to develop a system that might not be the old traditional 8 trains in the morning, 2 midday, 8 in the evening, and 2 at night that you think about with the 8-2 type of commuter network for trains? Obviously, COVID has, threw everybody on its head for a while, and we're kind of coming out from under that now and getting our balance. And the world is different. And so we'll be assessing that. I think it is is important for us to make sure that we're very deliberate and maintain the integrity of the plan the best we can, but also understand we're probably in a different world as well. So we'll be working to move forward and hopefully do that in a very positive, and there'll be plenty of engagement. So we will be in touch.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about route committee? All right, then I will turn it over to Ms. Davis for Finance and Policy.
Okay. The Finance and Policy Committee met last Wednesday, and we had a fairly light agenda also. The main part of it, I'd say the first discussion was about the 5310 Program Management Plan, and that is, we were briefed on the communicating with the public about funds available and how to apply for funds through the 5310 program. We mentioned this last month, and there's a timeline for that, and so I think it's just in the process of happening. We'll be reviewing that plan, and then once we review it, it has to go to the attorneys for the city, and then it comes back to us, and that would probably be in December or January, and then to the city council, the first quarter of *24.
Yes, if do
Please,
you mind, Linda, real
David,
fast? So,
yes.
the 5310 program, we would like for everybody to look at that. That is, as Linda stated, our program management plan for how we distribute those funds and how we meet our federal obligations under that funding. So that is out there under the Finance and Policy Committee agenda. So please review that. I can't remember what month we'll be bringing that back for actual approval. It is either
November?
next month. Okay, so we would be meeting one more time in committee to get any comments, and then we would like to bring that back to the full body in October for approval, if you so choose to endorse the content of the plan itself. So I just wanted to make that clarification there.
Okay, thank you. The next item that we addressed was our bylaws. As I've mentioned to everyone here on the authority, our committee is tasked with revising or developing bylaws, just like all the boards and commissions in the city. So last month I asked you to review those if you could and get notes to us. I also am happy to mention that our two new committee members were brand new at our meeting last week, so they had not, they had not seen them at all. So basically, we're kind of starting the process of reviewing a draft set of bylaws that we'll be massaging and discussing at our next committee meeting. And we still are hopeful that we will get something to you guys that is a final draft by the first of the year. So hopefully that's going to be coming. And I know some of you had mentioned to me you've looked at the drafts that are available. And if you do have comments, do get back to us, and we'll review those together in the next few weeks.
Linda, what's the medium to get you those comments? Can I email you them?
Yeah, you could email
Okay.
them to me. The committee is working on a shareable draft that
Okay.
we are sharing, but if you get them to me, I can bring them up with the other members of the committee.
Certainly.
And we'll consider those as we go through.
Okay.
So yes, if you have those, please, in the next couple of weeks, get them to me. We did talk about the next item, which is returning to fairs. As you know, we have, as an authority, sent a letter to council saying that we advise us to return to fairs in FY '25 because of shortfalls. And, well, one of the reasons is we think that we can return to fairs. The whole, that's part of the overall discussion that COVID relief funds are running out. Many of the expenditures for RTA have been covered by the federal funds that we got. And it kind of masked the fact that our bus system is going to be running short of funds. And we estimate that we'll begin to really see that by early next year. So part of our discussion is returning to fairs is going to give us a little bit more income, but it's certainly a drop in the bucket compared to the overall RTA budget. So I think what we are looking at is something that all our committees are going to be considering. And we've met once with the route committee to discuss is what are some other recommendations that we might have for dealing with a overall budget shortfall. I think the only real consensus that we've come up with that we came up with as a committee was a consensus that because the authority has not had an increase in our budget for many years, one of the natural items that we would consider is going straight to City Council and asking for an increase. Other departments have increased their annual budgets. We have not had an increase for a while. And so that's just one of the ideas that we're trying to come up with. But I think what we're really trying to consider is how returning to fairs is going to even be, what kind of funds that might generate in a post-COVID world. So many people are no longer having to commute to work every day. So that's going to change, even if everybody in Raleigh decided to commute. A lot of people aren't even going to their offices anymore. So it's so many unknowns. And I think that we're just really discussing at this point what we're going to do to deal with that city shortfall. We already talked about the safety and security, and that's, again, the overall budget shortfall. Am I missing anything, David? Nope. So I think that's
Yeah, we
it.
pretty much included the fairs as the budget shortfall together in the committee meeting discussion as well. And our apology, that looks kind of strange the way we talk. It says return to fair and then it says passes. That's our fault. We meant that we're looking at ways to, what are some pass options within that fair structure as we move forward, whether we have a fair or we don't have a fair, that we can utilize within the network so that that we can know that a passenger is on the vehicle, or if someone is not doing what they need to do, and we actually take their pass away, that there's a way to track that. So we're just kind of thinking about those things, and that's what that reference was about.
And that is, that was kind of humorous in committee. But that is part of the discussion, of course, is that we do have the capacity when and if we return to fairs to do it in a much more streamlined way. Most people have smartphones. If they're going to be paying for bus passes, can they do it over the phone? Are they going to have a paper pass, or is it going to be something they present as a QR code on the phone? There's just a lot of ways that we need to make the decision in light of technology that's available. And I think that we actually have access to and pay for already. It just hadn't been implemented for 3 years because of COVID. Yes.
This might be a question for David. Do you, I know that in the Triangle, elected officials decided not to reinstate fares, and some other places in the country have done that. But given, I'm assuming, all the transit systems are dealing with shortfalls across the country, do you think there's going to be a trend either staying fare-free or going back to fares compared to other
I would say
systems?
that there is much more consideration moving into 25 to consider fares. I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I think there needs to be a deliberate discussion on that, and that's going to occur. But we need to be, I feel much more inclined to be ready for FY25 than I have when we were in the midst of COVID. Yes, I think, there is a couple of things that, as you stated, certainly nationally and everywhere really in North Carolina, except here in the Triangle, systems have returned to fares. There's a few select systems, nationally that have either fare-free or suspended fares, but there's a lot of times there are very special programs or services within their overall network, and it's not their whole network per se. We are talking to our peers across the Triangle, and some of them are considering as well, making sure they have those contingency plans in place if a decision is made to return to fares. So again, it's way too early for me to say this is where we're headed, and certainly we would want the board to have an opinion on that, and the board's had an opinion on that in the past. But again, I think that the thought processes regarding implementing that are much stronger, or at least I hear more of that as a potential for FY25 right now.
And I just wanted to add, I don't know how much you discussed that this month, but I know we met previously jointly with Route, that one of the major points of discussion is that I think should be brought up whenever the public can hear what we're talking about, is that the bringing fares back is not the entire quantity of money that is the budget shortfall. It may not even be half of it. And so when we're making these decisions about asking council to give more money from the general fund, or looking for alternative like corporate support or nonprofit support, or anything that we might be looking at in terms of alternatives, it's not necessarily to keep ourselves fare free. It's because the budget shortfall is greater than fares will be able to cover. So just as context.
True.
If I can add one thing as well, certainly I talked about those contingency plans, and part of that contingency planning that we're doing is working with our regional, partners to understand what types of low-income fare assistance we would be able to provide, and what would that look like, how we would distribute that program, how would someone qualify for that program. So we want to know all of that in the not-too-distant future. So again, that's something that we'll be looking at, and we'll be bringing to, we'll have one more item in finance and policy. So, yeah, stay tuned on that. That will certainly be an important element of anything as we move forward.
Any other questions? I think that's it for our committee.
Thank you. Marketing did not meet. Do y'all have any updates you'd like to?
I just want to mention that the Busopoly game and ad campaign, marketing campaign that was created by our awesome staff has launched. So if you want to play, go to goraleigh.org, Busopoly, and you can also download the Event Z app and play. So it's you will hear more about this at our next meeting.
Thank you. Always excited when I'm scrolling late at night and I see a Go Raleigh Busopoly thing on my Instagram. It's great to see. Was that too vulnerable? I don't think so. Next on the agenda is performance reports. I know usually we sort of say, hey, these are in the packet. You can look at them if you have questions. But the chair, Ms. Omakai, and I had asked, at least from the Go Raleigh operating side, that we get a brief presentation from RITP Dev on their performance reports that they're putting together. So I think now would be the time to do that.
Yes, I'm not sure if we queued Bill up with any slides on that or not. I can provide him with just his operating data here real quick, and he can come to the podium and look at it out of board docs, because I do have that information available. Bill, that's our fault. We'll get those. We'll actually make slides for those in the future.
I have faith that you don't need
So
slides.
what I can do without going through the slides, if that's okay, is kind of give you a quick summary or overview in terms of what the service looks like. I got to say is that we're doing quite well in terms of the Go Raleigh. Right now is our on-time performance is running like 85+%. If you look across the industry in the United States, is basically transit agencies are running right in the high 70s, and here in Raleigh, we are kind of sustaining a on-time percentage about 85%. So I think that we're doing good. I think there's a lot of opportunities for doing better, and I think that we're working on that. We're getting ready to do another run pick here the later part of the year, and with that, I feel very confident that we will be able to do even a greater percentage. So that's something that we're doing very well. One of the other things that I'm very proud of is our accidents. For the month of August, our accident rate was 1.09. And I must tell you, that is fantastic. The goal is like 2.05. I think that's what the goal is. And again, going across the industry, I would tell you, normally they'll stay in the high 2.9 or 3.0. And so we are doing a really fantastic job in terms of safety, in terms of, covering our brakes, increasing our following distance, looking at the red lights, making sure that we're not running those things. And I think we got a very strong safety program. We have added to our safety program, we call it DriveCam. DriveCam is a system that helps us be proactive in terms of driving, in terms of what is our behaviors are as a driver. And I think it has really paid off in terms of what we are having for the month of August with our DriveCam. So that is great. One of the challenges that we do have, and I think that we're getting even better at it, is our staffing. Right now, our staffing is running about, I think it's about 174, which is the target is we are looking like 209. Right now, we are on the upper mobility with it, trying to get to that point. We have a class that's been in session maybe about 3 or 4 weeks, about 10 operators. And we just started another class on Monday with a class of about 24 operators. And so that's really going to bring us to a point where that those opportunities, what they're talking about, increase in service, that we'll be able to do. So again, we are continuously doing well and hoping that, we'll be able to do what we said we would do. Maintenance-wise, we're doing well. Last time I came here, our PM percentage we talked about was like 98%. For this month, we are running at 100%. So that means that the vehicles that we have on the road is being serviced at 100%. And I think that's a great thing as well. Ridership, if you compare the ridership before the pandemic and look at it right now, the trend is about the same. But I got to say, but the ridership is a little different because we still have many people that is still not using the service. And with a lot of things that we have been talking about with the security plan that we are looking at bringing back and doing other things with the service, we'll hopefully, in the years to come that we'll be able to go back and be able to meet that target goal where we need to be at. Pretty much overall, I think that we're doing well. We do have a few complaints, but nothing major, whereas it affects in terms of the quality of life for people here in the community, where they're not getting to work or getting to school or whatever that may be in terms of where they need to go. So again, we're doing quite well. Any questions anyone have?
I have a few, but anybody else?
I have one quick question. Who's in charge of cleaning Go Raleigh Station?
We are in charge of cleaning the stations. And so that we try to do that once a month, going in and steam cleaning the stations. I mean, really doing a super job. And so from what I see right now, yeah, we may have to do just a little bit more of it. So we understand that that's one of the shortfalls we got to work out.
That's been my observation. I really think it needs to be power washed or cleaned more frequently. It's just not pleasant.
Right.
So, thank you.
Yeah. And my last thing is not related to performance, but I think is related to engagement in terms of employee engagement as well as the board in our community. This Sunday from 9 until 6, we'll be having a family picnic. So I do invite all of you to come down. And so that's going to be at the John Chaffetz Community Center. And so I think that the workforce will be excited to see all your faces there and bring the kids, the grandkids, and I think it's going to be a really fun event.
Thanks for that. And then my two questions were just, I know you're working without slides, but we've had, I think at a couple past meetings, just conversations about incident numbers or complaint numbers from the operators as well as the public. Could you speak to that just briefly?
Yes. What we would do, if you allow me, for the next month report, I'll definitely have that available to you.
But generally, it's not trending up or down. It's sort of the same as it has
Yes, I sure will.
been. Okay. And then I think the other thing that would be of interest is from a customer service standpoint, and the sort of service and staffing would be missed trips, particularly like when it's dark, early morning, late at night. Those tend to be the most impactful, I think, to the customers.
So just talking about mixed trips compared to the previous months, it has really decreased, I mean, a lot. If I could say, it probably went down even more than a third in terms of what we have in missed trips. I think it was like around 130 in terms of missed trips compared to where we were way up in the numbers. And that is due to is having enough resources to actually put the service on the street. And now that we are getting our recruiting up to what we needed, and those missed trips will continuously go down. But I will get you a trend for our next meeting so that you can see the pathway in terms of where we're going.
Okay, and the last one is, since you have all these new drivers coming on board, are you guys ready to commit to a date or a vague timeline for returning our reduced service?
So we have a lot of things that are happening right now I can't discuss, but if I'm allowed, maybe next month I can kind of talk about that a little more. We have some issues that we have to work out with our workforce and the union, and once we get that cleared up, then we can probably give you a better assessment.
That's fair. We're just going to keep asking because we want to bring the service back.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right. That brings us to concluding remarks. And as we get here, I did also just want to say that Counselor Branch, our liaison, is in the audience today. I know we have some new members, so if you wanted a chance to speak to him, now might be your chance. And then anyone else have other concluding remarks? Seeing none, I'm going to adjourn the meeting today at 4:50 p.m.